Hello, my dear students. 学生们，你们好，欢迎回到新的一节课。Today we are beginning a new category, Category B, Unrealistic Requirements. We have just finished Category A. Today is the first lesson, B1 of Category B, and it's called Resource Constraints, specifically for understaffed. The core skill we will learn today is to say too much work in a professional way. Like I've mentioned, there are 4 categories in total for all of these difficult problems to deal with at work, and 4 lessons per category, totaling 16 lessons in this business English unit. So today we're learning professional language for resource constraints. By the end, you can describe workload limits neutrally, request time without sounding negative, and focus on constraints and not people. Okay, so let's begin. I will ask my students to usually define some definitions that will be frequent among the lesson material. So first, constraint, and my student will come up with something close to limitation. Then adjustment, my student will come up with something close to change. And right here is today's scaffold, and this is the model that once you learn, you are able to form your own free-flowing, free expression yourself. So let's read this. Constraint, adjustment, and request. Again, constraint, adjustment, and request. So what this means is the current limitation, what you must change, and what you recommend. Those 3 things will be highlighted when you use this model. So an example of this, I will place it on the board. Please read. Good. Given the current bandwidth, we may need to adjust the timeline. Timeline is also an essential word. Sometimes the most general sense of describing, speed limitation, late delivery, all that is simply mentioning the timeline. And you don't need a long explanation, just keep it operational. So next we will learn some key vocabulary. I do think that vocabulary is the foundation of speaking, but I do think that the only way to speak better is to speak. So let's get to it. So first we will continue with some language about constraint. So I will brainstorm with my students. What are some words you can think of when it comes to constraint? And I will give him some time. Good. We have bandwidth. Yes. We have capacity. Excellent. Workload. Yes. Allocation. Available resources. Excellent. These are some of the constraint language. Now let's do some other languages like adjustment language. By the way, if this was a live class, I would go over the vocabulary to make sure that my students understand each word, and sometimes I would ask them to build a sentence using 1 word or using 2 words together. So let's begin the adjustment language. So some words I would say are reprioritize. This is really useful. Instead of saying I want to adjust this and then make that and then move this here, move that, just say reprioritize. And then adjust timeline. That's also useful. And then reduce the scope. When it's too much work, we just have to reduce the scope. Scope is all the things you have to do. So I would ask my student to define scope, and if the answer is among the lines of how many things you have to do, what are all the tasks involved, I would say correct. That is the scope. And then we have a phase delivery and defer items. Excellent. So here are some of the adjustment language. Now let's do some request language. I want to share a phrase that I think is super helpful when it comes to business English, is saying may need to. When you say may, it is not only more professional but more courteous. So definitely in line with business language. May need to. What else? What else when you want to make a request? What other verbs may you use? Think about it. I'll give you some time. I'll drink my tea. Excellent. Recommend is always good. This means it's what you think is right. It's not the absolute. We have propose, suggest, and then also would it be possible? Would it be possible? Excellent. Okay, next we're going to do some focus language. This is where I prepare the student to begin speaking sentences, which will follow. So I'm going to copy and paste what I have prepared, and then I will say each line, and then you will repeat after me. Okay, repeat after me, please. Given current bandwidth. Given current bandwidth. With the current staffing level. With the current staffing level. We may need to adjust the timeline. We may need to adjust the timeline. It may require additional time. It may require additional time. We may need to prioritize. We may need to reprioritize. Again, we may need to reprioritize. Excellent. So I will give you an example of a situation, and then you will tell me which one of these phrases would be suitable. Let's practice that now. 3 new tasks added mid-sprint. 3 new tasks added mid-sprint. Which one is most appropriate to respond to this, please? Good. If you said a combination between the first one and the last one, I would say it's excellent. Given the current bandwidth, we may need to reprioritize. Excellent. Now we are going to jump into our core skill activity. This is what I mentioned earlier on the top of the lesson about saying too much work in a professional way. So let's get into that. So we are going to describe limits, not complaints. That's something you can keep in mind as we continue these exercises. You are describing the limit, not the complaint. So first, I will tell you a complaint, and then you will tell me a professional way to say this. Please read. We don't have enough people. Okay. Now, how would you say this professionally? I'll give you a second. Yes, you can say, with the current staffing level, the timeline may need adjustment. With the current staffing level, the timeline may need adjustment. Here is another complaint. This is too much work. This is too much work. What can you say instead? We can say something like, given current bandwidth, completing all items this sprint may be challenging. Another complaint. We can't finish on time. I would ask my student to consider what will be affected if you cannot finish on time, and what will you need because you can't finish on time. And think about those two things as you come up with your answer for the professional way to say this. It may require additional time to complete all deliverables. You try. Excellent. I'm going to underline each complaint. Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, so we are going to try some more. I will place it here for you to look at. All of these are complaints, and you're going to make it into a professional setting. So this is where I, one by one, with my student, help him get each complaint expressed in an upgraded professional way. I will refine his tone gently. So you go ahead and give it a try, and leave in the comments below what you think. I will read over them. And you can use your resources above, like the focus language, like the vocabulary, in making these 4 sentences more professional. Okay, now we will move on to the next activity, which is role play. I think that's really helpful in making sure that we test this out in real life, or prepare to test it out in real life. So here is a realistic work scenario. 2 engineers assigned to 3 projects. New feature added. Wow, that's a lot. So how would you explain this? You know, let's go over some criteria, and this is what I will do with my student in class together. I would say, you know, let's brainstorm what needs to be included in the answer. And here are some things. Please read. Perfect. If my student is smooth sailing, I would say correct, good job, you know, encourage him. If he has some issues, I will say something like, begin with, given the current bandwidth, ... And that usually would help a lot. So let's continue. So this is where we wrap up today's lesson with a workload constraint, sort of like a final output. So I'll give him a final one here. Describe a workload constraint and make a professional request. This can be personal or professional. For example, if he says something like, with the current staffing level, completing all tasks this sprint may be difficult. So you see how he used constraint here, and now we're going to do adjustment and request. We may need to adjust the timeline, and then that's the request, adjust the timeline. If you want to make it more clear, here you can add an adjustment may be needed, period. and then we may need to make modification to the timeline. So it's clear 3 sentences. If you're able to make it into 2, even better. The more concise, the better. That is a wrap up for today's lesson. I want to remind you that the idea of this lesson again is to shift from emotional to operational language. So instead of we don't have enough people, it becomes given the current bandwidth. Instead of this is impossible, it becomes this may require additional time. So for homework, think about a real life scenario where you had faced a constraint, a workload constraint, and then write about it, 3 sentences max, and give it to me for homework tomorrow. That's a wrap for B1, resource constraints. Thank you for joining me, and see you in the next class. Bye.